Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling phrasal verbs. You know, those tricky little things that can even trip up native English speakers. You've sent in a great list of common ones. And they've all got their own little quirks of meaning, as I'm sure you know. So we're going to explore what makes them so interesting and hopefully how you can get a handle on them.
Phrasal verbs are definitely one of the most fascinating parts of English, wouldn't you say? They're a bit of a puzzle, but they also add a vibrancy and expressiveness to the language. You just don't get that with single-word verbs.
That's true. I mean, think about, come up with, it implies creativity, right? A
Right.
bit of problem solving. But the situation completely changes its vibe, doesn't it? Like, coming up with an excuse has a totally different feel than, say, coming up with a cure for cancer, right?
That's such a great example, and it highlights why just memorizing definitions isn't enough. It's all about the context, the subtle ways these verbs are woven into sentences, and that's what unlocks their meaning.
This reminds me of something else from the material you sent, the verb come across. Finding a rare book, that's a good thing. But if someone says you come across as arrogant, well, that's not the compliment you were hoping for, is it?
Ouch. Yeah. And it's not even just the words themselves, it's the delivery.
Mm.
Imagine someone saying, "Oh, you came across so well."
Hmm.
But their tone is just dripping with sarcasm. Suddenly, come across takes on a whole new meaning.
It's like phrasal verbs have this secret layer of meaning that you can only unlock by paying attention to not just the words, but the whole situation. This must be extra tricky for someone learning English as a second language.
Absolutely. It's not just about grammar rules. It's about understanding the cultural nuances that are kind of embedded in how we speak. And because phrasal verbs are so common in everyday conversations, mastering them is a huge step towards sounding more natural and fluent.
Speaking of everyday English, some of the phrasal verbs you sent in really capture that casual, informal feel. Drop by, hang out. They're like these little snapshots of how we actually interact with each other.
What's interesting is that these seemingly simple verbs can add so much nuance and personality to your English. You know, drop by kind of implies a casual, unplanned visit, while hang out suggests a more relaxed, extended time together.
It's almost like there's shortcuts to expressing complex social dynamics, right? So for our listener who's probably fascinated but maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed, what's a good way to approach mastering these tricky phrasal verbs? Where do they even start?
Yeah, don't try to cram them all in at once. Start by noticing them in context. Pay attention to how they're used in books, movies, even just conversations you overhear.
That's such good advice. It's like learning a new dance. You wouldn't just memorize the steps from a book. You'd watch people dance, get a feel for the rhythm and flow.
Exactly. And just like with dancing, practice is key. Start incorporating a few favorites from the list you sent into your own speech and writing. Don't be afraid to experiment and see how they feel.
I love that. Now, we've got a lot of specific phrasal verbs to unpack, but before we dive into those, is there anything else about their nature or importance that we should touch on?
Yeah, I think it's worth emphasizing that phrasal verbs aren't just about informal English. They can be used in formal contexts as well. Understanding their nuances can actually help you express yourself more precisely and effectively in any situation.
Okay, that's a great point. I sometimes think of them as being mostly for casual conversation, but you're right. They can add a depth and sophistication to formal writing and speech as well. So, ready to tackle some specific examples.
Absolutely. Let's see what gems we can unearth from this list.
Okay, first up is back down. Now, this seems pretty straightforward, right? Like when you're arguing a point, but then you back down and admit you were wrong.
Yeah, that's certainly one interpretation. But backing down isn't always a sign of weakness. It can be strategic, especially if you're saving your energy for a more important battle.
That's such an interesting point. So it's not just about admitting defeat, it's about choosing your battles wisely. Now, I noticed blow up was on your list, and that one can be pretty dramatic depending on what's blowing up, right?
Absolutely. It's amazing how a simple change in context can completely transform the meaning of a phrasal verb. Blowing up a balloon for a kid's birthday party is a joyful act, while blowing up a building, obviously, is a devastating event.
And I bet you could even use blow up in a figurative way, right? Like someone blowing up in anger during an argument. It's the same verb, but again, a completely different meaning depending on the situation.
Precisely. Which brings us back to the importance of context. It's not enough to just memorize the definitions. You really have to pay attention to the words around it, the tone of voice, the entire scenario, to really grasp the meaning of a phrasal verb.
This is making me think about how phrasal verbs can be downright sneaky. Take turn up, for example. It could mean, like, arriving somewhere unexpectedly, like, oh, look who turned up at the party. But it can also mean increasing the volume or intensity of something, like, turn up the music. This song is amazing.
And don't forget that delightful scenario of a lost item suddenly turning up just when you've given up all hope of finding it.
It's like phrasal verbs are these linguistic chameleons, constantly adapting to their surroundings. Now let's see, what else do we have here? Break down. This one seems to have a lot of different uses.
Breakdown is a great example of a phrasal verb that can be both literal and figurative. It can describe, a physical breakdown like a car malfunctioning, but it can also represent a more abstract breakdown, like a relationship falling apart.
And I remember from your list, it can also be used for analyzing information, right? Like breaking down complex data into smaller, more manageable chunks.
You're exactly right. It's like taking something complex and separating it into its component parts, whether it's a machine, a relationship, or even just a set of numbers.
So it's not just about things falling apart. It's also about understanding their underlying structure.
I think that's a great way to put it, and it highlights how phrasal verbs can be both descriptive and analytical.
This makes me wonder if some phrasal verbs are more commonly used in specific situations or professions. Like maybe scientists use breakdown more often in their work, while artists might favor phrasal verbs that relate to creativity and expression.
That's a fascinating thought.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to analyze how phrasal verb usage varies across different fields and disciplines.
Okay, we're getting deep here. But I love how exploring phrasal verbs opens up all these possibilities for understanding not just language, but also how people think and communicate in different contexts.
It's true, they're like little keys that unlock these hidden meanings and reveal all the subtle nuances of human interaction.
Now, I know we have a lot more phrasal verbs to explore, but I think we've laid a good foundation for understanding their importance and complexity. We've seen how context, tone, and even cultural nuances can influence their meaning, and we've started to appreciate how they can be both playful and profound, adding depth and expressiveness to our communication.
I think you've summed it up beautifully. And for our listener, remember, this is just the beginning of your phrasal verb journey. Don't be afraid to dive in, experiment, and have fun with these fascinating linguistic tools.
Welcome back to our deep dive into phrasal verbs. We've already uncovered so much about these tricky but fascinating parts of English.
It's really amazing how much depth and nuance they add to our communication, and we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, right? I'm ready to dig even deeper. What other intriguing phrasal verbs are we going to explore?
Well, we were talking about how context can completely change the meaning of a phrasal verb, right?
Yeah.
And that makes me think of look into, which implies, a much more focused investigation than just a casual look for.
Oh, that's a good one. It's like when something piques your curiosity and you decide to look into it further,
Mhm.
right? Do some research, gather more information.
Exactly. It's about taking that initial spark of interest and turning it into like a more deliberate exploration. It could be anything from investigating that weird noise in your car to researching potential career paths.
Speaking of unexpected discoveries, let's talk about how come across can be both literal and figurative. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth revisiting because it really highlights how chameleon-like phrasal verbs can be.
You're right. Come across can mean stumbling upon something by chance, like finding a hidden treasure in your attic. But it can also describe how someone presents themselves, like coming across as confident or shy during a job interview.
So it's like the same phrasal verb can be used to describe both a physical discovery and a social impression. And that makes me think, how do phrasal verbs reflect cultural values? Like, is come across even used the same way in other English-speaking cultures?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And it speaks to the broader point that language isn't just about grammar and vocabulary. It's also a reflection of culture, history, and social norms. It'd be fascinating to explore how phrasal verbs are used differently in various English-speaking countries.
I bet there are all sorts of subtle variations and regionalisms out there. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about a phrasal verb that's all about taking charge. Set up.
Set up is a great example of a phrasal verb that can be both literal and figurative. It can involve physically creating a structure, like setting up a tent when you're camping, but it can also describe establishing a system or plan, like setting up a new business.
And sometimes it involves a bit of playful scheming, right? Like setting someone up on a blind date.
Exactly. It's a versatile phrasal verb that captures this essence of creating, establishing, and sometimes even orchestrating.
Now, I'm curious about build-up. It seems to have this sense of gradual progress and accumulation, like building up your strength through exercise or building up your savings over time.
You're absolutely right. Build up suggests a process of growth and development, whether it's physical, emotional, or even financial. It's about taking small steps, making consistent effort, and seeing those results accumulate over time.
And sometimes it's about collaboration, right? Like a team working together to build up a successful project.
Precisely. It highlights the power of collective effort and the satisfaction of seeing something grow and flourish through that shared dedication.
This makes me wonder about the relationship between phrasal verbs and motivation. Like, could using certain phrasal verbs actually encourage us to take action or have a more positive outlook?
That's a fascinating question.
Hmm.
I imagine there's a whole field of research exploring how language influences our thoughts and behaviors. It wouldn't surprise me if certain phrasal verbs like step up or build up could actually inspire people to take on new challenges and strive for improvement.
Okay, I'm adding that to my list of things to look into later. Now let's talk about a phrasal verb we use all the time, figure out. It's all about problem solving, right? Like when you're trying to figure out how to assemble a piece of furniture or understand a complex concept.
Exactly. It's about using our cognitive skills to analyze, decode, and ultimately make sense of something. It often involves, a bit of trial and error, some creative thinking, and that satisfying aha moment when the solution finally clicks.
It's like that feeling of satisfaction you get when you finally figure out the solution to a tricky crossword puzzle or figure out how to fix a leaky faucet.
And sometimes figuring things out involves reaching out for help, seeking guidance from others, and collaborating to find the best solution.
Which brings us to another essential phrasal verb, reach out. It's such a powerful expression of connection and empathy.
Absolutely. It's about extending yourself to others, offering support, asking for help, or even just making a connection. It can be as simple as sending a text message to a friend who's having a tough day, or as profound as seeking professional help when you're struggling.
It's about recognizing that we're not alone in our challenges, and seeking connection and support can make all the difference. And speaking of challenges, let's explore a phrasal verb that often comes up in difficult situations, deal with.
Deal with is all about facing and managing those challenges, whether they're personal, professional, or even global. It can involve problem solving, finding coping mechanisms, or simply accepting what you can't change.
It's about being resilient, resourceful, and adaptable in the face of adversity. And sometimes it involves setting boundaries, saying no to what's not serving you, and prioritizing your well-being.
That's a great point. It's about taking control of your own experience and making choices that empower you to navigate those difficult situations effectively.
Now, I'm curious about workout. It seems to have this dual meaning related to both physical activity and problem solving.
You're right. Workout can definitely refer to physical exercise, like going to the gym or going for a run, but it can also describe that process of finding a solution or coming to an agreement, like working out a disagreement with a colleague or working out the details of a complex project.
So it's about applying effort and strategy to achieve a desired outcome, whether it's physical fitness or a more like a complex challenge.
Exactly. It highlights the importance of dedication, perseverance, and a willingness to experiment until you find what works.
Okay, I'm loving these layered meanings. Let's see what else we have here. Lineup. Now, this one makes me think of those very literal cues we often find ourselves in, like waiting in line at the grocery store or for a concert. But I bet there's a more figurative meaning as well, right?
Absolutely. Lineup can also describe the process of arranging things in a specific order or sequence. It could be aligning your ideas for a presentation, prioritizing tasks for a project, or even just organizing objects on a shelf.
So it's about creating order, structure, and a clear pathway to achieve a goal.
Precisely. It's about taking these seemingly disparate elements and arranging them in a way that makes sense and supports that desired outcome.
This makes me think about how we often use phrasal verbs to describe mental processes, like lining up your thoughts before you make a decision or sorting out your feelings after a difficult experience.
That's a great observation. It highlights how phrasal verbs can capture not just physical actions, but also the inner workings of our minds.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already, but I'm so eager to keep exploring. What other phrasal verb treasures are waiting to be uncovered?
Well, how about one that's all about making a conscious choice? Rule out.
Rule out. That's about eliminating possibilities, narrowing down options, and making a definitive decision. It often involves weighing pros and cons, considering different perspectives, and ultimately deciding what's not the right fit.
Exactly. It's like when you're trying to diagnose a medical condition and you need to rule out certain possibilities based on the symptoms and the test results.
Or when you're making a big decision, like choosing a career path, and you need to rule out the options that don't align with your values or goals.
Precisely. It's about being discerning, making informed choices, and focusing your energy on the options that have the most potential.
This is making me realize how much power these seemingly simple word pairings hold. It's like they're not just about grammar, they're about capturing the essence of human decision making.
I couldn't agree more. They reflect our ability to analyze, evaluate, and ultimately choose the path that best serves us.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired to continue our phrasal verb adventure. What other linguistic gems are we going to discover?
Well, how about one that's all about positive transformation? Turn around.
Turn around. Now, that's a phrasal verb that evokes a sense of hope and possibility. It's like when things are heading in the wrong direction and you're able to shift gears, change course, and create a more positive outcome.
Exactly. It implies a reversal of fortune, a shift from negativity to positivity, and a renewed sense of direction. It can be used for personal situations, like turning around a bad habit or overcoming a challenging experience.
Or it can be used for larger scale transformations, like turning around a struggling business or even addressing a societal issue.
It's about recognizing that change is possible, embracing new approaches, and having the courage to steer things in a better direction.
And sometimes it's about literally turning around to gain a different perspective, to see things from a new angle and open yourself up to those new possibilities.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about being open to change, embracing new perspectives, and having the courage to shift direction when you need to.
Okay, I'm feeling energized by all these positive transformations. What other phrasal verbs do we have time for before we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
Well, let's see. How about one that's all about making progress and leaving the past behind?
Move on.
Move on. Now, that's a phrasal verb that can be both challenging and liberating. It's about letting go of what no longer serves you, embracing change, and stepping into that next chapter of life.
Exactly. It can be a really difficult process, especially when it involves letting go of something familiar or cherished, but it's also an essential part of growth and evolution.
It might involve leaving a job that no longer fulfills you, ending a relationship that's run its course, or simply shifting your focus to new goals and aspirations.
It's about recognizing when it's time to release what's holding you back and creating that space for new experiences and opportunities.
And sometimes it's about moving on from past hurts and disappointments, forgiving yourself and others, and allowing yourself to heal and grow. That's a beautiful perspective. It's about recognizing that the past doesn't define us and that we have the power to choose a different path.
I'm sensing a theme here. A lot of these phrasal verbs seem to be about embracing change, taking risks, and stepping outside our comfort zones.
You're right, and I think that's a testament to the dynamic nature of language itself. It's constantly evolving to reflect our changing experiences and perspectives.
Okay, I think we've reached a good stopping point for this part of our deep dive. We've explored so many fascinating phrasal verbs, from those that capture the essence of problem solving and decision making to those that evoke the sense of transformation and growth.
It's been a joy to journey through this linguistic landscape with you. And for our listener, I hope you're feeling inspired to continue exploring this fascinating world of phrasal verbs.
But our adventure isn't over yet. We still have more phrasal verbs to unpack and more linguistic insights to uncover. So stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll delve even deeper into the nuances of these captivating word pairings and discover how they can enrich our understanding of language and the world around us.
Welcome back to our phrasal verb extravaganza. We've already covered so much ground, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface of this linguistic landscape,
It's amazing how many hidden pathways there are in the English language, all leading to these unexpected meanings and subtle nuances.
I love that. And speaking of pathways, how about open up? It seems like it has this double meaning, both literal and metaphorical.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it can be something as basic as opening a door or window, right? Let some fresh air in. But then it can also be about a more personal kind of opening, like opening yourself up to new experiences or new ideas, even new relationships.
Yeah, it's like creating a space for genuine connection, right? Letting yourself be seen and heard, and just kind of embracing all the richness of human experience. Exactly. It might be sharing a personal story with someone you trust, maybe seeking professional help for some emotional challenges, or even just expressing yourself creatively, through art or music or writing.
It's about letting go of all that fear and judgment, embracing authenticity, and really connecting with others on a deeper level.
Now, how about a phrasal verb that's all about taking action and making a positive impact?
Step up.
Step up.
Yeah. It's got that energy of rising to the occasion, exceeding expectations, going above and beyond. It could be about volunteering to lead something, taking on a tough project at work, or even just offering to help someone in need.
It's about recognizing your own potential, right? And then using that potential to make a real difference in the world. And, sometimes stepping up means challenging the status quo, speaking truth to power, advocating for what you believe in.
Wow, that's powerful. It's about having the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard or unpopular.
Okay, so let's lighten things up for a moment. Let's explore a phrasal verb that's a bit more on the fun side. Mess around.
Ooh, mess around. Definitely has that playful, carefree energy. It's about, like, engaging in activities just for the sheer joy of it. Experimenting without any particular goal in mind, being silly and spontaneous.
Exactly. Could be playing games, trying new hobbies, or even just hanging out with people you love, laughing and making memories.
Yeah, embracing that joy of exploration and discovery. Just being present in the moment and finding delight in the unexpected.
And sometimes it's about messing around with ideas, brainstorming creative solutions,
Yeah.
letting your imagination run wild.
Okay, I'm ready to go out there and mess around a bit. But before we get carried away, I think it's about time to wrap up this incredible deep dive into the world of phrasal verbs.
I agree. We've explored so many amazing examples, from those that capture, problem solving and decision making, to those that evoke a sense of transformation and growth and connection.
It's been such a joy to go on this linguistic journey with you. And for our listener, I hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for just how powerful and versatile phrasal verbs can be. Remember, they're not just about grammar. They're about capturing how we live and think and connect with the world.
The best way to really learn them is to just embrace them. Use them in your everyday conversations, in your writing. Let them become a natural part of how you express yourself.
Absolutely. So go out there and experiment, play with language, see what amazing phrasal verb adventures are out there waiting for you.